So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Entrepreneurial Lunch and Learn offered by the Lawrence Enfield Center for Entrepreneurship at Baruch College. I am Marlene Lee King. I am the Executive Director of the Field Center. And the Field Center for Entrepreneurship is a multifaceted division at Baruch College. We offer free services and programs for the entrepreneurial community. Today's Lunch and Learn webinar is presented today by entrepreneur Costa Michailidis. I hope I did that right. He's a Baruch alum and the innovation-bound co-founder. Costa has spent the last 10 years facilitating innovation projects with scientists and business leaders. He's worked on reimagining the search for life beyond Earth with NASA. We want to know what that entails. He's built synthetic cells with the National Science Foundation, conducted innovation tournaments inside of Fortune 500 firms, and developed concepts for circular economies for island nations with Cyprus and Malta. With such an amazing and interesting background, Costa will share with us today his own stories from the field and habits as a great innovator. Costa, thank you so much for being here. You're such an interesting person and such a dynamic person. So thanks so much. It really is great to have you and for spending your time with us. I know you could be spending it with other communities and other universes, but you're here with us. So thanks so much. Please feel free to tell our participants more about you and more about what you do as an innovator and an entrepreneur.
You got it. You are very, very welcome. Thank you, Marlene, for the kind introduction. So yeah, go ahead and turn on your video if you'd like. I'll ask just a few questions, show a, raise of hands, that sort of thing. If you don't want to raise your hands, I think there are emojis or things you can put in the chat. But it's nice to have that little bit of interactivity. Quick apology about the background noise. In a hotel lounge today, coming at you from Dallas. So I guess you can kind of catch me anywhere. I do a bit of traveling. But okay, so let's start. I just want to get a handle for who's in the room since we're a small group, and I can kind of tailor what I'm presenting to you. So if you want to turn on the video and raise your hand, that's cool. Or if you want to use the chat, I will pull up the chat. So can you just put your year in here? So who's a freshman? Who's a senior, junior, et cetera? Who's in the grad program of some kind? Just give me a sense. And I see you have a disabled entrepreneur. That sounds awesome. Help editing the slide deck. Yeah, probably. Not that I'm the best person to help with the slide deck, but happy to help, of course. Although I think it looks like we lost it. All right. Anybody, nobody? What year are you in? Freshman, sophomore, senior? Senior, one senior. Anyone else?
Costa, I have one of my new staff starting today. She's a freshman. So she's actually by my side.
Very cool. Welcome. Okay, great. One freshman, one senior. Anyone else? No? Okay, so if you're listening along and multitasking, you're not going to get any value from this. So if you've got something else in another browser, email, and this is kind of in the background, it's not really going to be super useful. I'd encourage you to engage. So, all right, let's jump in. Tell you a little bit about myself, and what I'd like to try to accomplish today is offer you myself as an example so that you can understand the foundation that you're building at Baruch and the types of things you can build on top of that foundation. So I went to Baruch. Sorry about that. I went to Baruch from 2005 to 2009. I graduated, did not go on any further education, didn't get a grad degree or anything like that. I organized TEDx events initially after college. And one of the speakers of our TEDx event offered me a job. I moved in there and started doing facilitation. And I have started a company in parallel to that with my brother and worked for the company where I got hired. And the work that we do essentially boils down to helping people use their creativity to solve problems. In the case of NASA scientists, wicked hard problems. But these ideas can be used to solve any kind of problem in work and life. They're not exclusive to people who work in shiny laboratories or expensive office buildings. So I can give you a few examples. We can share some stories kind of from the field. I can give you the habits of great innovators. There are a few core habits that great innovators use in order to create new things in the world. And then I have some opportunities for you. So if you stick around to the end, there are a couple specific opportunities I can share with you that you can get involved in. One is with hosting and organizing a Tedx event, and another one involves sailing charters in the Caribbean. So if you're interested in sailing or the oceans, stick around. You'll hear about that at the end. How does that sound?
Amazing. I will hope you would take me with you too.
All right, indeed. All right, sounds great. Okay, so on the war stories side of things, I just want to share a couple of examples of the type of work we do. In 2014, I believe, we did a workshop with NASA on reimagining the search for life beyond Earth. So it's about 25 scientists, and they took 2 days. And across those 2 days, they started to ask themselves questions about the way they were conducting that research, what they could do differently to be more successful. And in short, on the science side, if you're interested, what we were doing then in the search for life beyond Earth is we were looking for things that are similar to life on Earth. So we were looking for oxygen-rich atmospheres. We were looking for planets similar distances to their stars than the Earth. We're looking for places with liquid water on the surface. These are all indicators that we might find carbon-based life or life that's like us. And what we are shifting to doing now is we're starting to take a more abstract approach. We're starting to say, well, what if most of the life in the universe is nothing like us? How would we find it then? How would we recognize it? And they were beginning to germinate ideas on how to do that. I recently recorded a podcast with Lee Cronin on that specific astrobiology question. If you're curious about that, I'll put it in the chat. It's a lot of fun if you're interested in the science stuff. My job in the room, because I'm not one of the scientists, I'm not there to contribute scientific insight or anything like that. My job is to help a group of people think creatively in order to generate new ideas, in order to build new concepts. So we were helping them, we were tweaking the atmosphere, making it fun and exciting and lively and dynamic so that they could get lots of ideas. And we made it quiet and chill and thoughtful and play music in the background so they could parse through the ideas they came up with thoughtfully. So we are priming the psychological atmosphere so that they can think in a creative or in a critical manner or in a generative way or in a strategic way, depending on what's called in the moment. We're also planning out that sequence. We want them to, do they have to do generative thinking up front? Are they inquisitive? Do we have to go from there to thoroughly vetting ideas? What are the, what's being asked of in each step in the process? So we facilitate that innovation process. Another fun example was building synthetic cells with the National Science Foundation. That was a 5-day workshop for 30 scientists outside of DC. And so the science here is currently in biology, we study biology by breaking it down to its parts and looking at the parts. We take a reductionist approach to understanding biology. And we can make great strides in certain ways, but certain problems are hard to solve. A whole bunch of things in medicine are hard to solve if you don't understand biology from the bottom up. And so what we're beginning to try to do is engineer cells from scratch. Like, can we take oils and waters and chemicals and make cells? Or can we make organelles, the little machines inside of cells that do things? Can we make new ones? Can we remake the ones nature makes our own way? We're asking these kinds of engineering questions. And in pursuing that type of work, we're learning to engineer biology. I would not be surprised if in my late 90s, I take my granddaughter out for a walk, or great-granddaughter, if I should be so lucky, and we go look at the unicorns. I would not be shocked. We'll see what we could do. The future is going to be really weird. It'll be lots of fun. All right, so those are 2 examples. On the business side, we did some work for one of the large tech companies. I'm not going to say which one. There's a little bit of confidentiality agreements you have with these organizations when you work with them sometimes. But one of the big tech companies, and we facilitated an innovation tournament for their senior managers. So a new group of managers were promoted. There are about 2 cohort managers. They went through 7 days of training in Barcelona. So we did some work for a large tech company in Barcelona. Let me put a link in the chat here in case people want to follow along. Or in case you lose me, that's the doc that I'm speaking from. Okay, so that was an innovation tournament. So our job there was to take a cohort of 50 senior managers and then a second cohort. We did training the full month, but 2 separate occasions. 7 days of training. We were in charge of 4 of them right in the middle. And what they were doing is generating new business ideas, generating cost savings ideas, generating partnership ideas, any idea on how to improve the business. And then they went through a tournament on making that happen. So they'd work on those ideas, form teams, pitch them to a panel of their directors, get some strategic advice. If the idea kind of wasn't good enough, they'd send them back. If it was good and they checked them off, they'd move forward to the next stage. In the next stage, they attach tactics to their idea. So, okay, you want to build this new product for the tech company. How are you going to do that? What are the tactics that you would use to take that idea forward? They'd move forward, go to the next director panel, pitch again, Shark Tank style. If they got the check on that stage, they'd go forward to the next one and attach numbers. At that point, it's like, okay, well, what do the numbers look like? What does it cost? What's the return we're going to get? Cost of the capital, etc. So they got some quick training on the financial stuff, attach numbers, pitched again to their directors. If it wasn't kind of good enough, they'd get sent back to the drawing board. If they're checked off, they'd go forward. Final stage was about risk management. And so when you do this sort of thing in a large organization, they don't cut you a check for $4 million so you can build a new product. They ask you what your first steps are going to be. How are you going to test this idea? How are you going to validate it? What are the big assumptions that you need to worry about? And you might get a check for $50K or something like that. And then you go test your idea, which is exactly what they did. The winning teams got seed funding. They went on to test those ideas. And even before it was over, there were some partnership ideas with early conversations. They had generated value in higher numbers than the cost of the training program. The return on innovation is insane. So really successful program, lots of fun, really, really interesting. Any questions on that kind of stuff? The types of work we do, how innovation happens in the real world on the business side or in the scientific community? And if there aren't any, I'll jump to how you can use it at home. But if you have any questions on this kind of stuff, we can handle it now.
If anyone has questions, you can either unmute if you're comfortable or type it in the chat. Maybe a question to start off with, Costa, is how did you get yourself involved in the NASA project? How did this opportunity itself come up? That sort of partnership.
Yep. So the NASA project we did through a sister company called No Innovation, K-N-O-W Innovation. That company's been around since about 2005. Ooh, maybe a little earlier. So they were doing work with the EPSRC in the UK at that time, and they just did really good work. And the EPSRC recommended that firm to run labs at the NSF, and from the NSF it went elsewhere. And it really was, we were doing good work for some of the funding agencies, and the agencies that fund science, they tend to talk to each other. They're not trying to keep secrets from each other. If one agency is doing something really well, they let the other agency know. They learn from each other. They're quite collaborative. In private markets, you have less of that and more competition. So different dynamics in terms of how you get customers. How did I get involved? I organized the Tedx event, and one of the speakers was the founder of that company. And he said, "You're doing really beautiful work producing events. Would you come produce events for us?" And so I was buying flip charts and handing out Post-it notes and taking photos. And about a year into it, the other facilitators were like, "Well, you've seen us run these activities before. How about you run this one this time?" And I said, "Okay." And they didn't know that I had 4 years of facilitation experience at Baruch through a student organization called ISEC. So I went up and I did it, and they're like, "Oh, well, put the flip charts down, forget the camera, do this, run the next activity." And they roped me into facilitation, and I sort of worked my way up from there. I also did a whole bunch of reading on the psychology of human creativity. There were a few people in our company who have master's degrees in that, so I kind of need to be up to par. So those are the components.
Okay, that makes sense, because I didn't understand the connection there. You said that part of what you do is that you help with the creative process, sort of to help push through the struggles. How do you actually do that? What are the tips and tricks that you may have to boost creativity or to push through the struggles and become innovative and get to that next level or the next point for the process?
Yep. There are two levels at which I can give you an answer to that. I can speak at our level, where we're in charge of a group of 30 or a group of 300. At that point, we're handling the psychological atmosphere and climate. We are designing the sequence of activities that people go through. So at that point, we're managing very large groups, and we're concerned with things like the dynamism in the room, the level of challenge, the level of granularity of what you're asking for. And you kind of have to get all of these pieces right. And so you're creating an atmosphere within which people can be creative. Idea time and idea support. How much time do they have to generate ideas? And a lot of companies, there's just so much pressure to be productive. There's no room to be creative. And so that's just idea time. So super basic. Something slightly more complex would be open debate. So the personal conflict, interpersonal conflict is bad for creativity, but open debate is fundamental to it. You need to be able to disagree with each other and vet ideas and use criticism to improve things. But you need to not attack each other, because then you don't trust each other. And once trust is gone, you don't have common interests anymore. You have competing interests, and now you can no longer be creative together. You can be creative against each other. Competition's good too, in different ways. So that's at the atmosphere level. So this is the sort of thing I might teach someone who's a director at a department or a manager of a very large team. This is about fine-tuning the environment, or a parent, right? If you're raising kids, you want to raise creative kids. Like, you are fine-tuning an environment in which their creativity is nourished and cultivated and honed. So parents, managers, directors, these are the kinds of roles where this level of skill is relevant. Now, it's a higher level skill, the individual contributor level, where you're actually doing the task or doing the work. This is scientist, this is entrepreneur, early stage entrepreneur, because later you become a manager. This is the programmer, the developer, the technician, the engineer, et cetera. So if you're on the front line, there are 5 habits that I'm setting out to teach. I am working on building an online course, Innovation 101. It is coming along very slowly, but it is coming along. And so those 5 habits are generating lots of ideas, using feedback to improve ideas, asking the right questions, testing early and often, and being ready to improvise. And if you look at just a generic problem-solving process, just a normal one, you clarify the problem, you generate solutions, you improve those solutions, you develop a plan for how to execute, and then you move forward and you implement. That's a very straightforward problem-solving process. At each stage in a normal problem-solving process, you can introduce creative thinking to take the opportunity to innovate. So instead of clarifying the problem, you might reframe the problem, look at it differently, dig deeper, try and do root cause analysis. You can go further than just a normal clarification. In the solution development, you can generate lots of ideas, which is how you get originality. You generate hundreds upon hundreds of ideas. I can show you pictures of Post-it notes we had on the wall with scientists. They go into the hundreds of ideas level to get to original thinking. Writers do this too. Artists do this. Picasso had 40,000 works of art in his life, which is a crazy number. It comes out to like 2 per day or something mad like that. And so among that quantity of ideas, you end up with quality ideas. There's more to it. It's not just about numbers, but that's stage 2. In stage 3, you're developing and improving a solution. Here, you're using feedback to improve ideas. So you might have an idea that looks bad at first, but all ideas look bad at first, right? The idea of using feedback to improve that idea is an opportunity where you can innovate. You can step up your problem solving to the level of the innovator. In stage 4, we're talking about putting together a plan. Mike Tyson's quote is my favorite. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's true. We'll have a plan until the plan meets reality, and then the plan doesn't matter anymore. And that's increasingly true as our world sort of runs on the steroids of technology and just changes faster and faster. And so normal planning, like business plans, used to be important, and now they're very not. We have what's called a business model canvas with a bunch of hypotheses on it. You're like, there's no such thing as a business plan. You have a business canvas, and it's filled with assumptions that you're making, and you need to go test them and figure out which ones are not true, and then pivot, and then figure out which other ones are not true and pivot, and discover a business model. So entrepreneurship has changed in that way. So that's your planning becomes this like building flexible plans or testing. I call it testing early and often, which means if you're going to try something new in the world, either new for you or new for everybody, you're trying to do something that hasn't been done or you haven't done, which means you're going to have to make mistakes and learn. And good, that's part of your process. So start out that way. Don't call anything a fact, call them all assumptions and go out and test them. That's your stage 4. And then the last one's about implementation, right? And stepping up implementation. The innovator in the implementation stage is an improviser. They adapt quickly. They're flexible. That's how innovators act when they're in the implementation stage. Salespeople, for example, if you go into a sales role, you are going to learn how to adapt and improvise on the fly. Now, it might cause a little problem for your colleagues who are going to have to deliver on what you just sold, but those are the trade-offs and negotiations that you'll engage in as you work on teams and so forth. All right, so those are 5 habits of great innovators. I have a couple of articles in that link that I shared. You can click, I recorded them on audio as well, so you can read the article, you hit the play button and listen to it on the commute. It's very easy. I would check them out. They're a lot of fun. And then there's a full list of content in there as well. I would, if you're interested in innovation, I would read What is Innovation? And First Rule of Innovative Thinking. And then I would go from there. So one of the reasons I like connecting with Baruch is that Baruch, in my humble opinion, I think Baruch is what it takes to save the world in this decade. If anyone hasn't noticed and you look around, we are in a strange kind of crisis period, right? Division is insane. There's just the number of things that are wrong in the world today are innumerable. I wrote quite harshly about it in an article for The Ticker. You're welcome to check that out, and shared that with a bunch of alumni who were all nodding and shaking their heads. Point being, Baruch does two things to you, or at least it did to me. Teaches you the value of hard work. Why? Because everyone else around you is working their butt off. Baruch is one of the most diverse communities in the world, which means people from 100 plus countries are there. A lot are working a second job to get their degree. Some of you on the line probably are. You're talking about people who intern, work a job, get their degree, and volunteer for student organizations. I mean, it is a hardworking environment. It is contagious. You will become a hard worker because you're there. And it is a huge asset. It took, for example, the banks a little while to figure out that if they hired from Baruch, they got a lot better than if they tried to go hire from Ivy League with people who grew up with a silver spoon, et cetera. So that's hard work. Two is genuine diversity. So we're talking about people from 100 countries, right? And so you engage a variety of values, beliefs, views of the world on day one at Baruch. And developing a sense of cultural understanding comes in that time. And it's a very, very cool process to go through. You end up with what Greeks call philoxenia, which means love of strangers. And it's like, yes, strangers, because we think different. That's the point, right? That we have differences. We view the world differently. And as you fall in love with that and you begin to see value in it, you start to change. And so you become someone coming out of Baruch who sees the world as a beautiful place full of strange people. And you work harder than everybody else around you. And those two things are huge assets. I will work my butt off to try to add creativity and innovation, meaning that if you come from Baruch, you are the type of person who can innovate. We're going to need that. So hopefully there'll be a third thing there long run. We'll see. So that's my why I really love to try to contribute here to Baruch. Let me take a quick look at my notes. I think that's all I've got for you, and we could jump to questions. Yeah, we can do that. And then I've got a couple opportunities I want to share with you.
So thank you, Costa. So I want to go back a little bit to some of the things you talked about earlier, especially the tournament. And you said that you developed the training for these leaders and these directors for these companies. Can you tell us whether you had to be privy to proprietary information to support the training, and you customized depending on the needs or the business needs of the company, or are you out of the box? Do you have some out of the box advice and training and material that really supports businesses in general?
Yeah, so creativity is agnostic to whatever specific content to an extent. So we teach it that way, and that's our starting point. However, there's value in the overlap. So when we do work with scientists, we've been working with scientists for the company 15 years, me probably 10. So there's a lot of knowledge that comes along with that experience. So if you imagine an overlap between content and process, so we have process expertise and creativity. If you imagine content expertise and the overlap, it's in that overlap where you're innovating. So I can't be innovative in any scientific discipline because I don't have any I can't be innovative in fashion. I can't be innovative in whatever specific domain. And so the point is to combine the creative process skills with the content expertise. And it's going to manifest slightly differently in different places. Something like generating lots of ideas will have primacy somewhere in the scientific domain, but will not, for example, somewhere in computer programming. That might be a domain where it's not about lots of ideas. It's more about the development and looking at the problem differently and so forth. These are random examples. I don't know that those are specifically true. So it's about the process and the content and the overlap. When we teach from the position of the process standpoint. We teach the agnostic version, unless we get a client who's willing to spend a lot more time with us, in which case we can weave them together.
Right. So that actually is really good point, that there are very unique differences in industries needing a different creative boost, and how you approach the process can vary. You mentioned the value of training and creativity. How do you measure such things? How do you measure what the value comes out of a creative process? How do you do that?
Yep. Businesses use something called net present value typically. And so they'll sketch out a hypothesis for a new product or a cost reduction initiative or something like that. They'll assign a cost of capital. So they'll have a cost of capital of 8% or something like that. And so they'll say, okay, they basically assume they're going to borrow the money for everything, or assume using the capital they have has to do at least an 8% return because there are other projects that are available. So the company will use some sort of cost of capital and then look at, does it return greater than that cost of capital. 8% is a decent metric, although inflation is much higher these days. So it's a weird world. The economics are a bit messed up. And so it's a strange time to try to think through that. So the net present value is a calculation of all future potential proceeds of an idea discounted to today. So money in the future, or hypothesized money in the future, is worth less than money now because you don't have it yet, right? And so that's the discounting process. And so you take, if an idea is worth $8 million across 10 years, what's its net present value with a discount rate of 8%? And there's a math formula for any finance majors. You can dig up net present value calculations. So that's typical on the business side. So purely in creativity terms, your metric is going to be something along the lines. So we do very soft metrics. So if I have a room full of scientists and I'm asking them so we've clarified the problem, we know what it is, et cetera. We're ready to generate ideas. They spend an hour generating ideas. I'll ask them to have a look at the wall of Post-it notes they have up and say, hey, is there at least one thing up there everyone's excited about? And ask for a show of hands, and I might get half of them. Oh, okay. How about two things? And I might get one person. Like, okay, not enough. They need more. And I'll do another round of brainstorming or brainwriting or whatever activity we're doing to generate ideas. And then we'll go at it. And at some point, all the hands will go up. It's like, okay, so if I asked you to pick one thing to work on, would it be a hard choice? And they all nod and go, yeah, at this point, it'd be hard. Okay, good. Now we have enough ideas. So the measurement I'm using is based on the stage we're in to go to the next one.
Interesting. So at one point in your talk, you talked about individual contributors and the approach you take with them. And those are the scientists, those are the people that are in the weeds, they're the doers. Are there different approaches that you use, and are there struggles that you see between the individual contributors and those within leadership, the ones that make the decisions? And how does that affect the way that you go through the creative process with them?
Yeah, so at the highest level, there are two generic problems that organizations have with being innovative. So the first is an overall risk aversion inside of the organizations. So think about the evolution of a company, right? It's built on a novel idea, a product idea, or a deep concern with a problem they wanted to solve, and they tried lots of different solutions. So it wasn't a product idea, it was an obsession with a particular problem. Whatever it was that startup team based the company on. They built a firm and they started selling. They got customers and they were buying the product. And so they needed to ramp up. So they ramped up and they put things in place and they hired people. And they started to have consistent revenues and quality controls. And then they started to hire only a specific type of person who would deliver on that quality metric a certain type of way. And so over the evolution of a company, they become culturally and organizationally risk averse and efficient machines. They get really good at delivering shipping containers to the docks or whatever the business is. They get really good at delivering that thing. And if that thing isn't particularly conducive to being creative, then you have this risk aversion that emerges inside of the company. No one knows how to take a risk because their job is based on them being able to maximally deliver whatever unit of measure they're being measured against, whether that's sales or widgets produced at the factory and so on. So problem one is you end up with these organizations who are hyper efficient, hyper productive, but have no room for creativity. They're super risk averse. Risk aversion is the cultural problem there, and then no time for creativity is more of a process thing. And there's more to it. You could unpack it further than that. That's the summary. The other type of problem you find is organizations that are very dynamic, but are bordering on chaos. Like they got lots going on, but it's just not organized. There's no strategy. This is very haphazard. AOL is an example of something like this, and it happens because they did so much acquisition. So they were huge at the beginning of the internet, and then they just started buying a bunch of assets. They owned the Huffington Post and a bunch of other things. And so really dynamic, but no real overall strategy. It's not really connected. Things were a bit of a mess. And you can put that on a spectrum. So too orderly, too chaotic. Somewhere in the middle, you have flavors of innovative organizations. Apple, for example, is one that implemented a strategy of isolating their new product development. So the iPhone team was a different team with different engineers, different management, different performance measures. They were isolated out from the rest of the organization, and they built the iPhone almost in secret, separate from everyone else. And so that's one sort of crude approach to dealing with managers and individual contributors. There, in fact, they took managers and individual contributors and everyone else out and built a separate team. So that's one kind of component. If a manager is overly concerned with productivity and not concerned with creativity, and they've got staff that are concerned with being creative, we do something called stealth innovation. We teach people how to be innovative when they're not getting support for that innovation. Called stealth innovation. It's a set of skills like soliciting feedback for improving ideas, establishing credibility, establishing credibility for novel ideas. Those are the kinds of skills, and these are uphill battles. You are learning to sail in a storm, in a sense.
You're absolutely right. I used to manage a full team of different divisions. There were sales, there were creative people, there were technical people, there were student services people, and the dynamics to push for creativity and productivity, because productivity is the maintenance of what we're already doing. And the creativity is how do we enhance what we're doing or offer new services? And it was hard to balance both.
Yeah, it's a polarity that's difficult to manage. Absolutely.
Right. I don't have any additional questions. If there are any questions from the audience, please feel free to either put them in the chat or you can raise your hand and you can unmute and provide some substance to our conversation here as well. And Costa, I know you have some opportunities. Maybe while they're getting their questions together, you can speak a little bit about those opportunities you have.
Yep, happy to. All right, let's see. I wonder if I can do a screen share here. Green button, blue button, all the colors. All right. Okay, can you see my browser, at least on the right-hand side there? Yes. Okay, see if that's okay. Okay, so first opportunity I have is Tedx Gramercy, and there's a whole bunch. There's generic career advice there at the bottom of that doc if you click on the link yourself. First one is Tedx Gramercy. So we held a TEDx event for actually many years. We did two in Engelman Hall at the Performing Arts Center and downstairs on B3, all the way down in that beautiful basement area. So we did it in 2012 twice, actually, in the spring and in the winter. We did another one in 2013 at the United Nations. We were involved in the production of TEDx UN Plaza, which was really cool. I got to speak at the UN introducing a segment there. That was a really interesting moment. And then we did another one at Baruch at what's the big theater called in the 23rd Street building? Yes, we did one at Mason Hall. which was a lot of fun. You had like 900 or 1,000 people there. That was really, really cool. We had 6 speakers. And then we've done a series of salons since then. The salons were not at Baruch, but they were one speaker events, that kind of thing. Why is this an opportunity? So TED is a globally recognized brand. They're a lot of fun. It's a really diverse global community. It was a really cool thing to be a part of. There are certain frustrations. You are engaged in something that's just large and amorphous, and they have weird rules and blah, blah, blah. That said, you can do some really beautiful, interesting work. One of the pieces of advice I have to anyone looking to advance their career is don't go to networking events, host events, and don't even host networking events. Host events that are about something. Like make it, nobody likes networking for the sake of networking or sales for the sake of sales. Like don't do that. Pick something you're passionate about, find something you love, and host an event. If you don't know what you love, do TEDx and try a bunch of different things out. They require you to try things out anyway. Like if you were to do 6 fashion talks, they wouldn't let you do the event. You have to do a bunch of different things. So that's why I think it's a pretty tremendous opportunity. When you're in that host position, you learn a giant set of skills around event production management. And if you can pull it off where you can actually generate some revenue above and beyond your costs, you can pay yourself. So it's like an internship where you pay yourself. It's a little entrepreneurial, but the brand helps a lot. The first event we did was sold out within a week. Second event we did was sold out within a month. Because people really wanted to go to these things. I don't know if that's still going to be the case. If not, marketing is going to be a little tricky. Good, you learn. So for the putting yourself in the host position, there's the learning benefit, but then there's also the benefit of people are going to want to network with you. You become the attractive magnetic force in that situation. This is not extrovert only. I've seen some introverted TEDx organizers pull off giant, incredible successes and reap the rewards. This isn't about if you like standing up in front of a large group of people. If you don't, good. Get someone else to MC the event and do the behind the scenes part. You're still the host. All right, that's TEDx. Now, at our second TEDx event, we had a speaker there named Jim Holm. Jim is, let me scroll down here. Jim is the captain of a research sailing vessel and the co-founder of a charity called Clean Oceans International. So he spoke at our TEDx event in 2012. And since then, they've done some incredible work. They've given talks at oceans conferences around the world. They acquired that research vessel that I mentioned. They hadn't had it back then, so they acquired the vessel. And they were looking for ways to launch a sailing charter experience. And so we got engaged in helping them. We, in this case, is Innovation Bound, my company. And we're working on a program called Sailing to Save the Oceans. And the idea is we want to reach out to Instagram influencers who would love to be on a sailboat and go sailing in the Caribbean for 7 days, and who would like to help raise some funds for this charity. So you raise funds for the charity, you get paid a commission. So nobody works for free. The influencer partner here gets paid regardless of how much funding they raise via that commission. And then if they raise enough funds, they come on a sailing expedition, and that sailing expedition is mission-based. There's a mission that your charity has, a reason they're sailing. It can be to deliver plastic to fuel conversion technology to a remote community where they're currently burning their trash. It can be to do a cleanup. It can be to do what's called surface skimming plastic particles off the surface of the ocean and taking measurements of what's there and then contributing that to a piece of research. So those are the mission-based sailing expeditions. They're also a ton of fun. Wakeboarding, snorkeling, scuba diving, etc. And so we are helping launch this product. We're reaching out to influencers, pulling them on board, helping them creating content, helping them raise funds, and ultimately trying to launch this partnership program. And if it's successful, it can make a chunk of money, and it can contribute to a charitable cause. So we are quite thrilled about this. This is the thought on the first set of voyages. There'd be Fort Lauderdale, Key West, Havana, Cancun, etc., all the way down to Panama. And so those are the first voyages we're setting out to do. The opportunity there is to work with me and my team. So this isn't TEDx, this is Innovation Bound, to work with my team. And specifically, we're looking for someone interested in the marketing side of things. So this is reaching out to influencers, convincing them to come on board and be partners or to try it out with us or something like that. So marketing sales kind of role. Internship, we could probably make it a paid internship, or we could probably get you credit, whatever is important to you. So those are the two opportunities. For either of them, just email me and I'll connect you. For the Tedx Gramercy one, Tedx Gramercy should live at Baruch. There should be a group of Baruch students and alumni who organize it and run it every year and do a bunch of salons and use it to promote their careers and their interests and bring awesome ideas to Baruch via that TED vehicle. So working hard to try and get it to you guys. I'm no longer in New York. I'm based out of Florida and travel around the world. And it's not something I can do anymore. So looking to pass that one on. The gig with Sailing to Save the Oceans with my company is with us. And that will be, I don't know about the time frame there. It depends on the person. I would love if a few different people were interested, came, tried it out, and we found someone who really liked working with the team and wanted to continue on for a year, 2, 3, etc.
These sound like great opportunities, Costa, and I'm really glad that you're here to share them with our Baruch community, and we're going to help spread the word as well. So that way you have some great candidates to participate in both arenas. I don't see any additional questions, so I want to thank you so much for sharing today, being a part of our community, as always, giving back to us, and being a Baruch alum myself. I'm proud to call you an alum with me, and thank you so much for the participation for our attendees today. Look out for an email from me for the recording, and for some of the information. I'll pull a lot of that from your document. So I'll share that with our attendees. And this is our last Lunch and Learn for the semester. So look out for the details for our spring lineup, which will release pretty soon. And I appreciate everyone being here today with us. So thank you so much, everyone. Lauren, did you want to say thank you to Costa as well?
I do. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Costa, we call you the highly functioning human being that you are. It's really a remarkable, just your passion for the college, the value that you feel you got out of the college, and the contribution that you're making beyond the hallways of the college is really remarkable. So we're proud of you. Thank you for everything you're doing, and just excited to see what all the possibilities are working together with Baruch and our students.
You're very welcome. It's amazing what 8 hours of sleep can do. I need help. So to any of the students or alumni who want to jump in and get involved in some of the work that I'm doing, I can't wait to build and grow and do more.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Have a good flight, Costa.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, Lauren.